Hello and welcome to Read Through the Word. Today is Saturday, August 23rd, and the name of our lesson is Who or What is Supporting Us? We're going to look at Ezekiel chapter 29, verses 6 and 7. All the people of Egypt will know that I am the Lord, for to Israel you were just a staff made of reeds. When Israel leaned on you, you splintered and broke and stabbed her in the armpit. When she put her weight on you, you collapsed and her legs gave way. I just thought that wording was interesting, so I decided to look at, some other translations. In the NRSV. It says, when they grasped you with the hand, you broke and tore all their shoulders. And when they leaned on you, you broke and made all their legs give way. The NIV says, when they grasped you, you broke and their backs were wrenched. I missed that little part of the first part of the verse. When they grasped you with their hands, you splintered and you tore open their shoulders. When they leaned on you, you broke and their backs were wrenched. Sorry about that. So interesting ways of putting it. Basically, when Israel leaned on Egypt, it was like a broken back, a torn shoulder, a wrenched back, splintered, stabbed. These are the visuals of, what they're saying. This is what it was like when Israel tried to rely on you, Egypt. Not very supportive. And we know, of course, that that God admonished the Israelites and said, "Why are you relying on Egypt?" Right? You're instead of looking to me, you're running off to try to rely on Egypt. And look how reliable they were. So, and Egypt, it's not like Egypt hadn't been strong. In Ezekiel 31 verse 3, talking to Egypt again, you are like mighty Assyria, which was once like a cedar of Lebanon with beautiful branches that cast deep forest shade, and with its top high among the clouds. But they had gotten to a point where they weren't reliable and they weren't strong, and so they weren't reliable for Israel, and that's not how God wanted to support them anyway, to support Israel. So very interesting. So when you think of a reed, right, that doesn't sound very strong. In the IVP Bible Background Commentary, it said, so first of all, reeds were common in Egypt, as we know. It was, the idea of leaning on a staff made of reeds and then being broke by it. That wouldn't have been a weird picture at all for them, because reeds were common, and that metaphor would have been very well understood. And in the IVP Bible Background Commentary, it says, the Pharaoh held several scepters or staves that represented his power and office. The was scepter, so that's not was as in the verb, the past tense of the verb to be. It's was, not quite sure how you pronounce it because it's an Egyptian word, but the was scepter was forked at the bottom, and the top handle was carved in the shape of a dog's head. Another kind of scepter, the hekwa scepter, was shaped like a shepherd's crook. Though these were generally not made of reed, tomb discoveries have confirmed that at least in one instance, a reed staff was included among the staffs of Pharaoh. So most of the time, this was not the material of choice at all. The other kind of staves that we talk about, those were the commonplace ones. Sturdy or something they could carve, something into. But there had been an example of a reed staff in the Pharaoh's, in the tomb of Pharaoh. Interesting. So we know that Israel was trying to rely on Egypt when they were utterly unreliable. But not only that, they were relying on humans instead of relying on God. Yahweh was saying, I will take care of you. He sent the prophets to, Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Isaiah. He's sending the prophets to tell them, to tell them, how they need to be faithful, how they needed to listen to these prophets instead of the false prophets, and to follow the way and to follow what God said they should do. And instead, they chose to say, whoa, that doesn't sound good. We want to go to Egypt and we want to rely on them. We want them to come save us. We want Egypt to be our strength and support. It didn't go well. When I think of, the very weak kind of support, this staff made of reeds, splintered and hurting them. It wasn't even just that their reliance on Egypt didn't work out well. It actually hurt the Israelites. Leaning on the wrong thing is not just bad, is not just difficult because it doesn't give you the support you need. Leaning on the wrong thing can actually be harmful, can actually cause pain and injury and hurt. It can actually harm our spiritual lives, our hearts, our testimony, whatever it is. So we have to be really careful in what we're leaning on and what we're trusting to support us. When I think, originally in one of the verses I talked about originally in the lesson, in Ezekiel, how Egypt was once like mighty Assyria, like a cedar of Lebanon, beautiful branches casting deep forest shade. I guess that to me is a really beautiful picture of the God that we serve. This strong and mighty tree, deep, deep roots going down, going down into the soil, and branches reaching up to the sky and branching out where, other animals find protection within its branches. And it made me think of a few verses. The tree imagery, the imagery of the strength of trees and the life that they bring and the support, the kind of the picture of support, like God's support to us. This beautiful image of trees is at the very beginning in Genesis and at the very end of the Bible in Revelation. This image, this picture of a life-giving, supportive tree. Genesis 2:9, it says, the Lord made all sorts of trees grow up from the ground, trees that were beautiful and that produced delicious fruit. In the middle of the garden, he placed the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So, of course, we know that, they weren't supposed to eat of it, but this tree was supposed to give life. It was a symbol of life that God had given people. And in Revelation 22, verse 2, it says, it's talking about a river here, flowed down the center of the main street. On each side of the river grew a tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit with a fresh crop each month. The leaves were used for medicine to heal the nations. That's a great picture of support. That's a beautiful picture of how God brings life and how God demonstrates his solid and his solid love for us. Too, in the something to do, I put lean on God and his wisdom. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. Proverbs 3:18. So when we lean on the things that give us life, we can, tap into this beautiful picture of a tree of wisdom, of life, of love, of growth. This tree of life, this picture that God gave us at the very beginning of the Bible and at the very end. What are we leaning on that really is going to support us? Is it strong? Is it true? Is it going to hurt us? Is it going to hurt someone else? Is what we're leaning on, founded in the love, the truth, the goodness, the righteousness of God? Or are we leaning on some other support that we think is going to come through for us and it's not? So to ask ourselves today, what are we leaning on for support? Are we leaning on something that God has given us that's good and strong, and this is how he's supporting us? Or is it something that's going to bring harm? Thanks for joining me here today, friends. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.